Gopi Jana Baba Girivaradari Gopi Jana Baba Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yara Madhava Sindhaviyari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Radha Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Balaji Mai Subhadra Jaya Srinathaji Jaya Balagopada Srinathaji Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Gaurani Jaya Jaya Gaurani Jaya Jaya Gaurani Jaya Jaya Gaurani Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Asto Visatya Shishimara Divine Grace Founder of ISKCON Abhay Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki Their most merciful Lordship Shri Shivarakunja Bihari Ki Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Maya Subhadra Ki Shri Nathaji Shri Balagopal Ki Shri Gauritai Ki Nitai Go Prem. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. We are reading from Shrimadbhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 14, Text 4. Text 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiki. Text for Chapter 14, Canto 1. Jima Prayam Vyavaritam Jima Prayam Vyavaritam Satya Mishram Cha Soridam Satya Mishram Cha Soridam Pitri Matri Surid Bratri Pitrir Matrir Surid Bratri Dam Patinam Cha Kalkanam Dam Patinam Cha Kalkanam Jima Prayam Vyavaritam Jima Prayam Vyavaritam Satya Mishram Jasoridam Satya Mishram Jasoridam Pitrir Matrir Sirid Brakir Pitrir Matrir Sarid Brati Dampatinam Chakalkanam Dampatinam Chakalkanam. Please check. Jima Prayam Vyavartitam Satya Mishram Jasaridam Pitramatra Sarid Brati Dampatinam Chakalkanam Jima Prayam Vyavaritam Satya Mishram Jasaridam Pitrir Matrir Sarid Bratir Dampatinam Chakalkanam Jima Prayam cheating Vyavaritam in all ordinary transactions. Satya duplicity. Mishram adulterated in. Cha and Saridam regarding friendly well-wishers. Pitrir father. Matri regarding the mother. Surit well-wishers. Bharatir one's own brother. Dampatinam regarding husband and wife. Cha also. Kalkanam mutual quarrel. Jima Prayam Vyavaritam Satya Mishram Jasoridam Pitrir Matrir Sirid Bratir Dampatinam Chakalkanam. All ordinary transactions and dealings became polluted with cheating, even between friends. And in familiar affairs, there was always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers and between brothers. Even between husband and wife, there was always strain and quarrel. Please repeat. All ordinary transactions and dealings became polluted with cheating, even between friends and in familial affairs. There was always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons.
Always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons.
Between well-wishers and between brothers Even between husband and wife,
even between husband and wife,
there was always strain and quarrel.
there was always strain.
All ordinary transactions and dealings became polluted with cheating, even between friends. And in familial affairs, there was always misunderstanding between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers and between brothers, even between husband and wife. There was always strain and quarrel. Purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A conditioned living being is endowed with 4 principles of malpractice, namely errors, insanity, inability, and cheating. These are signs of imperfection, and out of the 4, the propensity to cheat others is most prominent. And this cheating practice is there in the conditioned souls, because the conditioned souls are primarily in the world, material world, imbued with an unnatural desire to lord it over the material world. A living being in his pure state is not conditioned by the laws, because in his pure state he is conscious that a living being is eternally subservient to the Supreme Being, and thus it is always good for him to remain subservient, instead of falsely trying to lord it over the property of the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, the living being is not satisfied, even if he actually becomes the Lord of all he surveys, which he never becomes, and therefore he becomes the victim of all kinds of cheating, even with his nearest and most intimate relations. In such an unsatisfactory state of affairs, there is no harmony, even between father and sons or between husband and wife. But all these contending difficulties can be mitigated by one process, that is the devotional service of the Lord. The world of hypocrisy can be checked only by the counteraction through devotional service to the Lord and nothing else. Maharaj Yudhisthira, having observed the disparities, conjectured the disappearance of the Lord from the earth. Om Jnana-timirandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshusun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we're seeing that all the things Yudhisthira is naming that we see prominent now on the planet, that we now take for granted as normal, he was saying were evidences that Lord Krishna had left the planet. And just like we were speaking this morning, AJ and I, that the elevated state of consciousness of the people on the planet very much has to do with the planet's place even in the universe. And we see from the history of the world, not only was it knocked down into lower than the lowest planetary systems, but it was done so by a demon. It was done so by a demon. So this is very powerful instruction that some Jivatma had been enabled by the desires of his mind to bring the earth planet down lower than the lowest planet in the universe, lower than Patala. So far down into the universe that it was submerged in causal ocean. Now, we have evidence and records of the earth being flooded at different times. And when it was flooded in the time Lord Krishna was here, it was being flooded by Indra because he was dissatisfied with the fact that Krishna was directly related to the citizens of Vrindavan not worshiping him anymore. Krishna directed them to worship Govardhan Hill instead. Now how this must have brought Indra down in his own mind to a level that he thought was not proper for the ruler of the heavenly planets. And yet Krishna put him in his place, even though he brought all these floods. So now the flooding at some time in history that took place were responsible for the North and South poles being frozen and capped with water, sealing off the openings in the north and southern regions. And when these are melted, then those societies from within the earth will once again have very easy access to the exterior of the planet, as we will also have very easy access to the interior of the planet. And then it will become not common knowledge. But when that takes place, I was reading yesterday, in the rulership of Maharaj Ikshvaku's sons, the earth is described not as Navadvip, 9 islands, but 7 islands. This means that there was more water on the planet at one time than there is now. And this now that is frozen in the ice caps may very well be left remaining evidence of what was once on the earth a higher level of water, so much so that there were only 7 islands on the whole planet. And this may be what happens again once these are melted, because they are going to melt. And it is not by the misdeeds of the inhabitants of the planet, it's by the plan of God. And those that are not connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead are going to be surprised at the tremendous change that this will cause in the Earth's atmosphere. But we have knowledge being passed down since time immemorial about that which will take place in the future. So we don't have to fear, we don't have to think of ourselves as being condemned by the supreme powers that be. But those who have surrendered to the one who is in control of the entire universe, people don't realize that the universe is under the control of the Supreme Person, and he is currently sitting on the throne of control of the entire universe. So, eventually, by the leadership of the Supreme Person being passed down into the universe, though that generation that is allowed to dwell in this universe during that time, that the holy names will take root in the hearts of those that it has been planted in all the hearts of those that it has been planted in. And that includes, some of them are in higher planetary systems now. Some of them may be actually in lower planetary systems from having not followed the instructions given by the spiritual master. It is said there are hells even made for Brahmins who don't chant Gayatri.
Hell?
There is a hell for that. So that helps us to understand how serious and how important an aspect of the consciousness that we develop, and it directly being related as well to this perspective, this universal viewpoint that Gayatri gives us and our position in the universe. It is said, face east in the morning, and best for that to be done before the sun rises, so that when there are still stars seen in the sky. And then at noon, midday, when we're facing the east direction, but the sun is directly overhead. And this puts us directly on top of the body of Mahavishnu. And he's directly underneath us at that point of midday. So that would make it almost impossible to see him at that point from where we are situated. You'd have to be on the other side of the planet. So then we get by evening time, then when we are facing Lord Brahma, then we are facing the sun. Then behind us again is same way that in the morning behind us was Mahavishnu. Then in the evening also, because we have changed direction to the sun, then also behind us would be Mahavishnu again. But when we leave these, this is all in preparation for leaving these bodies, so that when we do leave the body, it won't be foreign to us where we are. We've already been familiarizing ourselves with this universe 3 times a day. And so, to some extent, if a Brahman's not chanting every day, like he has a destination to get to, but he's not paying attention to the road to get there. So this is why it's punishable. I don't know to the extent, the extremes, that the punishment would be put upon him, but it would be enough indelible mark on the soul for him to never forget to chant Gayatri again. That's what all these punishments are for, to correct us and put us back on the proper path. This is why I want to make a presentation to Congress, because they have to be brought to the knowledge of the fact all these prisoners are committing crimes by lack of knowledge, because they do not know the end result, the harm, the punishment that they are bringing upon themselves. And in most cases, most of them have no belief whatsoever in a supremely powerful person whose laws are automatic. Now we may say, irregardless of man's own ability to punish crime, all crime, the Supreme Lord, the laws created by the Supreme Person are powerful to the extent that they automatically carry out their punishments and their rewards. But man doesn't have the ability to create that. And not only that, but present time societies are setting standards of laws that are themselves, in some cases, breaking the laws of God. This has to do with regards to foodstuffs, that humanity is taking part in the taking of life for the preservation of humanity. So we feel as though we have to kill lower forms of life to continue our existence here. But there are forms, manifested forms of living beings that are on the planet for the purpose of giving human beings sustenance and nourishment. And in that manner, then, it takes away the idea that we have to kill some creature that has eyes, nose, ears, tongue, mouth, family, mother, father, sister, brother, all these creatures that have family. The purpose for family is to experience love, which is coming directly from God. When these creatures experience family, they gain from the association of one another the knowledge they need for their subsistence. And they've carried that on since their species was put on this planet. That's something else that's not known, but all life is coming from the original place in the universe, from the original body, which is Brahma. His name is Brahma. So all forms of life that now are populating the universe originally came out of the body of Brahma. So they didn't evolve into being, but there is an evolution going on. The evolution is the development of the spiritual energy that the soul is, that moves itself from one species to another by either more elevated consciousness or more degraded consciousness. And those souls that experience one form of life in animal species, they also have desire. And God, as the fulfiller of all who seek Him for the fulfillment of their needs, God is of the nature to give all those who ask. There's a saying in the Bible, you have not because you ask not. And so anything we're lacking in, it's because we haven't asked the Supreme Person from whom all things are coming. We have not asked for that which we require. If we find ourselves lacking, but then too, analyzed by sound reasoning, we can know by experience as well, or the experience of others, that this lack that we are brought to is by previous misuse of that which we are now desiring to be fulfilled in, believing it to be a necessity for the continuance of our life, whether it's food, shelter, whatever it may be. It is our perspective that we have towards the Supreme Controller that allows us a particular place in the universe in relationship to where that Supreme Controller sits. And we are only able to get closer and closer to the Supreme Person by qualification. And qualification comes by adherence to the principles laid down. And those principles can be followed. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to have a car to perform those regulative principles that God is asking mankind to engage in for His pleasure. It pleases God. Krishna reveals to us what He takes pleasure in seeing us do. And so this form of singing and dancing, unique to Krishna consciousness, is a means of being able to purify the heart so that we can actually dance with God. We can dance with God. We can sing about God and sing with God and hear the sound. By hearing the sound of God's name and meditating upon the person of God, automatically, as we were reading yesterday in Bhagavad Gita, just as Arjuna was shown the universal form of the Supreme Person, Krishna is equal to us. He will reveal to us in that same way if we apply by the desires of our heart. This Krishna consciousness movement is getting into the consciousness and the very heart's desires of humanity at large, in order for human beings to know what kinds of thoughts to develop about desires, what kind of desires to have that will produce the greatest result. See, we're getting what we asked for. And in some cases, it's glorious. But in other cases, people are asking for things that are not actually beneficial for their own well-being. And so therein lies the problem. And this causes so many problems in society. Lawmakers setting themselves aside from the rest of society, believing themselves to be better. They are supposed to be better. But with the perspective they have about themselves being better than everybody else is a total disqualification for the position they are taking as lawmakers. What does Lord Chaitanya say? We should regard ourselves as lower than the straw in the street. He gives this as a general instruction for everyone. Everyone, not just common people, but everyone, every lawmaker, every person who sits in a courtroom as a judge of other human beings. We regard ourselves as lower than the straw in the street. So what good is that? What good it is because then we can put down our own self-abilities and judgments that we formulate in our minds and allow God's thoughts, precepts, truths, understandings, and eventually by application of these teachings, the wisdom by applied knowledge for us to be able to perform the functions of our lives in a manner that displays the qualities that Krishna wants us as human beings by having relationships with one another that are based on sound spiritual principles. That by these creations of these familial relationships that we should share with one another, then the society becomes a strong, bonded community of loving people that will go out of their way for others more so than they go out of their way for themselves. See, that's the mood that is developed in service to the Supreme Person. But when you're in that mood to the Supreme Person, then when you go to general society, we keep that mood. Still, I want to offer to you the best that I have, right? So this that I have learned through all the studies that I have given my mind to, and that accumulated wisdom I have gained from application of those teachings, I want to give you. You may be at the beginning stages of your life. As children, 5, 6, 7 years old, they can be receiving the same knowledge from 50, 60, 70-year-old people at these beginning ages and thereby evolve society. And that is what the educational system is created for mankind to be able to experience. When I say mankind, I mean all human beings. I'm not just talking about one gender, but all human beings. Because the scriptures look at all of humanity as being in equal need of removal from this universe, which is subject to death, old age, and disease, to deliver us to that place that is without those forms of suffering and anxiety. And as long as humankind sees these scriptures as giving us a reason to fight with one another, quarrel with one another, create problems and disturbances in society, society won't make that evolutionary progress. If we look at human beings, the development of the human psyche as a whole accomplishment by all the members of the world, and we compare in our minds what ideally the perfection of society would be, if we look honestly and objectively at where human beings are, even as compared to 5,000 years ago, they're still fighting against themselves, killing off themselves, one another, for reasons they have believed in their minds as a cause to kill other human beings who differ in their belief systems, who differ in their value systems. And so, because we differ, we have to kill one another. This is what is messing up the relationships of the world. And in order for mankind to be brought to that ability to be able to evolve most perfectly situation for human beings to evolve in, is that society that has adopted the principles of unity, those principles that will keep us unified and keep us able to develop as human beings these senses that we are being given, to develop them perfectly without using the material energy for any other purpose than that which it was created for, than that which it is here for. By being taught this at very young ages, then, the soul that only abides in that spiritual energy from day one on, then will be having an experience of complete freedom its entire life from the forcing energy of karma. When we say free from, freedom meaning free from that energy that pushes people to do things they have no control over. Because if we don't make a constant effort to control the senses of our physical bodies, then they're going to run wild. And that means that the senses make the demands to the mind. And the mind then becomes subservient to the senses of the body. And in that way, we are actually slaves, but we don't know it. And we think, because then we go out and we have the ability to buy this thing, buy that thing, eat this thing, taste that thing, look at this thing, hear this. Then we're thinking, oh, I'm so great, I can do all these things to satisfy myself with. All the time not realizing what satisfaction really is. Because this world does not have the means of providing that which the soul, which we are, will be able to find itself totally satisfied with because of the nature of its makeup, because of the substance of its being, because of the fact that it came originally out of the body of God, which is totally spiritual. And for its own nourishment, it is only going to find itself nourished by spiritual energy. It is spiritual energy that gives the soul realization. And it is that association with the original person that gives us the ability to develop realizations about his own words that give us superior knowledge. Superior meaning not that makes us think of ourselves as superior. No, that gives us the proper perspective of where we belong so that we can perform the functions of our responsibilities in a way that we get along with one another. We are a uniting force. We're a strengthening force. We're a nourishing force. We're a caring force. We're a loving force. And that's by established laws of God that we are made of. Having been breathed out of God's body, the substance that God speaks into being, it is coming from him. And he spoke us into being, having been in his body, transferring us into another body, the body of Brahma. And by that means we were manifested into this material universe. How did we get into the body of Krishna to begin with? That comes by desire. If you want to be God, or you're envious of God, you want to be in God's position because you think he's not qualified, you think yourself to be in that position better. And we see this evidence in so many human beings. They are determining for themselves. I make up my own mind about my own decisions that I want to make for myself. You know that man that came here the other day that disrupted class? And when class was over, if you'd have listened to the next 3 sentences he made, they all began with I. Every sentence after that began with I this, I that, I this, I that. And it is very evident of what is on our minds when we speak like that and we make that I am to be more important to us than anything else. And that's the difference between love and false ego. Because love for one's own being is not real love. Love that goes out and gives out what it has, that's love. So love is not taking, but love is giving. Yeah. And see, when another is giving that love, then the reciprocation of receiving is not taking. It's also contributing to the factor that love is making between 2 individuals, giving and receiving. It's not taking and withholding. Which is what, see, all these transactions that are going on in the world, they're going on actually reluctantly. I don't want to give away my money. And what I do give away, I want to give away as little as I can so that I can have more. That's not love, though. See, And that's interacting with our consciousness and our minds and the patterns our minds get put into each and every time we get born in. So the interactions animals have with one another, that forms patterns of consciousness, patterns of mind. And that's why we are given the means. And this means we are being given to be able to use every day to become free from the control of the mind, free of the control of the senses, free of the control of the material energy externally, free from the effects that the involvement in that material energy creates, which is always suffering. It's all suffering. Even the good part that we would consider as a reward forces us to have to be in a place again to be able to receive the effects of that reward. And if we are having problems to begin with in this material world, then we're going to develop the desire, I don't want to come back into this material world. I don't want to get the suffering that this material world is offering. Therefore, I have to set in my desires, in my consciousness, in my efforts towards what I want to have in life, towards that spiritual, eternal energy. And then as we set our desires towards the fulfillment of that responsibility that comes with the knowledge of spirituality, then those patterns are being formed with the consciousness, with the mind. And that will automatically lead us at the end of this life into that eternal realm. And so, by the constant wanting to give and applying ourselves to the energy and the development of the energy and the knowledge we need to be able to give what we have as this knowledge of Krishna consciousness is. That constant applying forms in us a pattern. And that pattern then that we are applying ourselves to will become an eternal form of everyday activity going out. And it will continue after this life. That's the nature of the spiritual energy, is going out, constantly expanding and increasing, constantly increasing. The same way that we increase desire by knowing that there are more and better things than we knew about yesterday to be desired to establish in this world as common knowledge amongst all human beings, at least. Before we can get to the animal kingdom, we got to educate the human beings, right?
Yeah.
But, we just have to press on. The same way we got ourselves into this mess by desire, then we get ourselves out of this mess by purified desire and developing that, pushing forward with that constant desire every day. I'm going to reveal the love that I have for Krishna by the activities I engage in today. And tomorrow, I'm going to do that with even more knowledge. And every day it's going to increase until the day comes I will see Krishna face to face. And he will be pleased then to look upon me because I'm following his instructions. I didn't make up my own way. I followed his way because we know he knows best. There's an old TV show called Father Knows Best. See, if we apply that to Krishna, then it becomes a truth. Not all human fathers know what is best, but the one Father of all knows what is best.
Did you read the quotation today?
What is today's quotation?
When there is suffering given by Krishna, a devotee does not take seriously this suffering. A devotee thinks it is the favor of Krishna that he has put me into suffering. They never see suffering as suffering. It is favor of Krishna. That is devotee's vision. It is exactly like a son who knows his father well. If the father slaps, the son never protests. He knows that it is good for me. Similarly, a devotee is never disturbed when there is suffering given by Krishna.
Wow. Yeah. See, this is love that the devotee has for that which is being given to him to correct him, to allow him then to become better. And that's the way love is administered by parents who give instructions to their children in such a way that they don't have to be physically dealt with in order to be guided. But they find such reward through the application of the teachings that they don't want to depart from the teachings because they're getting so much from it. And that's the way wisdom can be with us, our greatest friend also, as Krishna is himself. The summation of the totality of all wisdom. And that's who's giving us the ability to have friendship, relationship with himself. And that's what we want. That's what we want, desire to develop in our evolution.
Somewhere I heard in a lecture, like love means sacrifice, love means service.
Yeah, Seva. And that's what it's all pointing us to. The realization comes and then we apply it. By applying the precepts, we do something on behalf of the faith and the love that we have. We prove it, and we show that by our activities and our deeds. And then when our activities meet the same as the standards we are promoting by our words, then that becomes a solid, irrevocable fact, as it's said about study of Bhagavatam. No, nobody can take it away. Nothing can stop you then. You become an irrevocable, established force of bhakti. God. Any comments, any questions, any realization? Jai. Krishna's mercy. Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai, Gurudev, Ki Jai.